The Public Servants Association says government departments can expect some disruptions as workers intensify pickets over wages. Negotiations deadlocked again last week after the government refused to budge from its offer of a 3% increase. The union wants at least 5.6%. For an update on this story, we're joined by the Public Servants Association spokesperson, that's Mr. Reuben Maleka. Mr. Maleka, thank you very much for your time. Where do you stand at the moment, or perhaps a much more refined questions? Are there still negotiations to speak of that are taking place between yourselves and the government?
Yeah, good morning, Toli, and good morning to the viewers. Of course, at this point in time, we are at the stage that we'll be starting with the mass action come Thursday from the 10th, indefinitely. As we speak from last week, we have seen that our members and other members of other trade unions that we are on the same situation of not finding solution to the demands, that they've been picketing, and the continuation of the pickets will be until Thursday. From Thursday, there will be a full-blown strike action throughout the country where there will be no one in the service, in the public service. We must also mention that in the process, it means that there are some of the, like the PSA, the General Trade Union, we have a number of teachers that will also be taking part in the action. So come Thursday, we expect that there will be no public servants that will be in service. They will also be joining the march.
It is in the middle of an exam, as I understand it, Mr. Maleka. When you mention teachers, you're going to send panic. How big a strike is this? We understand that figures of about 800,000 public servants are in the employ of government. Is that how big this strike is going to be?
Yes, of course, the strike is going to be with huge implication. We do not expect that we'll arrive at this point where we'll have to call up the strike action. However, we have no alternative. And the most crippling areas of the strike would be especially in the home affairs. As you know that for funeral undertakers to be able to do their service, they will need death certificates. There will not be any death certificates that will be issued. Birth certificates will not also be issued. The ports of entries throughout the country, if you have to arrive internationally from another country, you will not be able to be processed by the Department of Home Affairs. If you have to leave the country come Thursday, you will not be able to do so, as none of the officials of Home Affairs will be in service at the ports of entries. So that is one other area that one can expect a huge impact. We're looking at Department of Justice. If you've got a court roll that will have to run from Thursday, you will not be doing so because most of the officials in the justice cluster will also participate in the strike action. Therefore, those services will not be available.
Is there any chance, Mr. Maleka, that this strike could be averted? You are telling us that on Thursday it's a full-blown strike. I'm asking you this question because the acting Minister of Public Service and Administration, Thulas Nxesi, did say something, I think it was either just before budget or after budget, that this amount of 3% was penciled in, was possibly budgeted for ahead of that speech by the Minister of Finance. Are you saying that that has basically collapsed?
Yes, the negotiations have collapsed. However, as trade unions, we already all the time been saying we are ready at any time when the employer is serious about negotiations to come back and negotiate in good faith and to find a solution to this impasse. Because whether we will be on the strike or we are in a protest, and with the days that as parties we need to sit down and find solution. That is the purpose of negotiations. However, it is very, very difficult to negotiate with the employer who is positional, who even before we could even go into the bargaining council, who will go to parliament and pronounce on implementation. And that is the kind of attitude that makes it more difficult to even negotiate, because we don't believe that it was right of the Minister of Finance to appear in Parliament and pronounce implementation of a resolution. Unless if we are now saying that, the purpose of collective bargaining is now diminished, ministers can on their own just make rulings and, come up with any percentage without negotiations. We must also indicate as PSA that we noted also the media reports that the president has indicated in Parliament that he will be looking into the condition of service and salaries of public service and see if they can be determined. We want to advise from the onset that there is a statutory bargaining council, the PSABC, established in terms of Section 38. There is no anybody or any institution that has got powers to determine salaries of public servants. Is the negotiations in the PSABC, unless if there's a plan of this, government of the day to do away with the orderly collective bargaining. Therefore, we understand why they want to pronounce salaries of public servants. Salaries are not pronounced, salaries are negotiated.
It's a tough situation, Mr. Maleka, because government has been saying for some time that they simply cannot afford this. And so I ask you again, is there no way from your end to try and compromise on your demands?
Obviously, we did compromise a lot. If you consider the fact that our demand was 10%, we currently sitting at inflation of 7.4%. We are saying we are willing to settle at below inflation at 6.5%. So that's a huge compromise on its own for one to be able to say, I'm willing to accept less than inflation. So, but if you say whether the government can afford, one can say, but if they can afford, their behavior does not equate to the talk that they are saying they can afford. Because if it can happen that in the midst of negotiations, the president pronounced that ministers and deputy ministers would get free water and free electricity. And after we make noise that is only withdrawn from the ministerial handbook, how much would have cost for the deputy ministers and ministers to have a free electricity and have free water? While as South Africans, as trade unions, as public servants, we can't even afford electricity. But I'm talking about officials here, deputy ministers who are as far ahead of the public servants, but they wanted to give them free water. Just recently in April, the president pronounced 3% backdate, 2 years backdate of a salary increase for public office bearers. So if they could afford backdate of 2 years to public office bearers, what is the difference to even just give a 6.5% in the current financial year? We are not saying backdate, in the current financial year, and we are told there's no money. So the evidence out there, the behavior in terms of public office bearers does not equate the fact that there's no money. The behavior is different.
It's clear then that you are of the firm view that government is negotiating and has been negotiating in bad faith.
Yes, absolutely. There is no intention of meeting of minds. There's an element of, undermining, but we all know where it comes from. It comes from the stance that was taken to even not implement Resolution 1 of 2018. And that from its own showed that we are trading, there are signals of some sort of dictatorship that is creeping in where the issues of negotiations will be eroded. We can see that it's no longer about negotiations, but it's about the power that the minister believes they have. And that is the time that workers must unite and show that it cannot happen. That after 1994, we still have ministers who still want to be the rulers instead of being able to govern. So that is why we have taken a stance as trade unions that we cannot allow rulers to take the center stage. We are going to take on the streets from Thursday, and we'll make sure that unfortunately most of the public service services would not be available to come from Thursday.
And perhaps a repeat, as I let you go, of the crucial government services that are completely going to come to a standstill. Which ones are those?
Yes, as I've indicated earlier on, firstly, you know that we've got visitors, we've got people that are outside of the country that would want to use to come in the country or leave the country. Those are the crucial services that would not be available. You go to the ports of entries, including airports. If you arrive internationally at OR Tambo today, from Thursday, you will not find anybody to process that kind of services. So if you go to the Department of Justice, if there's a court role that needs to be done, you will not find anybody in those departments. So those are some of the key departments that I just want to mention, with the understanding that all other services, including the possibility of disruption of some of the education sector, which is unfortunate because the teachers also are members. Teachers are also suffering like any other public servants, as much as we would not want to disrupt the exams. But this is not to blame on trade unions. This is to blame on the government that for some time after we made our demands, they dragged their feet to find ourselves now in this space where it's November, and we cannot be blackmailed as trade unions that we cannot disrupt exams. Unfortunately, teachers also, as they suffer, even do not have money to go to work. They have to at some point have truth down and make sure that their demands are heard.
Reuben Maleka, thank you very much for your time. He is the spokesperson of the Public Servants Association.